Well, hi. Welcome back to the Toilet Zone. Yeah, so, why is it the Toilet Zone? I don't know, because I called my YouTube channel that a long time ago when I was making different videos and I thought it was funny. And it's still kind of funny, and it's even funnier when I realized, like, a couple weeks back that I've been releasing videos with the name The Toilet Zone and nobody really even questioned it or anything, so we're gonna call it that. It's just gonna be a neat little thing that happens here on this show, which yeah, it's been a minute since I did a video. You probably noticed nothing happened. I didn't go to jail or anything like that. I kind of got overwhelmed by doing just too many things at once. I needed to focus on other stuff, and it was easier to just take the videos down and not worry about anything than to kind of leave them up there, because I do want to answer everybody's question. It just wasn't possible to do everything at once, and I don't really care about making videos that much, so I stopped doing it. But also, I do appreciate everybody reaching out and watching the videos and asking questions and keeping, kind of building a community around this stuff, I guess. And yeah, so just started thinking about it and was like, yeah, that is kind of cool. And I have some new production techniques that I'd kind of like to show, so thought this would be a good outlet for that, and probably the people who watch the original videos would probably be into it too. So here we are, gonna try to do, I don't know, I don't want to say one a week, but I'm going to aim for one a week, probably end up doing more like one a month.
You suck!
But anyways, that's where we're at here on the Toilet Zone. So if you're new to the channel, we make beats here, we use hardware. I'm gonna start integrating the computer more. I use FL, so follow along with that if you're an Ableton user. Sorry, we can't help you on this channel. But anyways, you might see that there's a couple more Dr. Rhythms here than the last time I was making videos. So yeah, we're just keeping the old Memphis rap production techniques alive. So let's get into it. No idea what I'm doing. Basically, the technique today is using FL to send the MIDI signal to these machines so that I can write a beat, DAW-less, as it were, and then basically record it track by track into my my DAW. So have more ability to tweak the sounds that way, go back and do remixing, which is a problem with a lot of my hardware jams. They're just 2 tracks, so I can't really change anything. If I end up not liking one thing, I might not even release the track. Probably a lot of you starting out are going to want to know how to do this stuff instead, because yeah, it's cool recording stuff on tape, but the quickest way still to get a beat out of your head, I think, is using something like FL. It's just more versatile than a tape machine, and you can use those sounds. I'm going to show you a couple techniques for doing that too. First thing that I'm going to show you how to do is to set up a MIDI out channel on FL for what you're doing. So if you look over here, still got the microKORG. That is my main MIDI keyboard. I don't really use a lot of the microKORG sounds that much these days, but it is excellent for integrating with FL because there's already a preset for it. So I'm going to switch to the FL view. I'm going to go to Add, MIDI Out, and go down here, Presets. We want the microKORG. It's already set to channel 16, and as you can see, it's lighting up, showing me that I've got MIDI control. So I can send a MIDI out. Actually, I'm using MIDI through because I use the Akai MPD26 to transfer the MIDI signal into FL from this because it's got the USB hookup. And it's dying now, but once upon a time it was cool to have the pads as well as a keyboard for whatever I wanted to do. Now I got drum machines, so I don't really fuck with it that much, but still just leave it set up by default. But anyways, anything I hook up to the microKORG now, I can control MIDI with it as long as I have it set to the same channel, which, as you can see up here, is 16. So set any keyboard that I want to control to 16. I don't need to do that with the drum machines because unless I want to be writing drum parts with the keyboard, I'm only using a MIDI signal to tell the drum machine to start and to keep it on tempo so that when I go back in the DAW, everything is lined up to the grid. I'm not going to bother setting the camera up and showing you because you've probably seen it on the channel before, but I'm using an ESI 32 rack mount sampler, so it doesn't have any keyboard or anything. You have to use MIDI if you want to be able to like play different notes on your sample. So that's what I've got hooked up. I've already got that set up, and I've got a sample here, but I haven't chopped it up yet. So that is what we are gonna do. Okay, so I'm going to play the sample that I used side by side with the original. So this is the original. It's from an EP by the electronic group Gas called Modern. And then here is what I did with the sample with the ESI 32, which is basically I just cut a little section of a little synth pad at the intro. I changed the sample rate, I dropped it quite a bit, and then I added the internal EQ to bring up some of the mids so that those stand out more than the lower or highs. I didn't see a need to lower or raise those because I have access to that on my mixing board. But I also use the internal compressor, even though I do have a hardware compressor, because it just has an unusual sound. So here's what it sounds like now. And as you can hear, I can pitch it now. So I'm going to mess with some more sample settings, see what else I can do with it. Alright, so I just messed with the VCF filter a little bit. So even though I put compression on it internally, I'm still going to use the hardware compressor and slam it a little bit. Alright, so there, we got a sample to work with. Keep that on the back burner for now, and let's fuck with some beats. Alright, so we decided on the DR5, the Dr. Rhythm section made famous by Grimm of Children of the Corn, Tommy Wright, and of course Mr. Maceo of the Manson family. We remade a beat by him on the channel. A lot of quality compositions made with just this, so this is going to do the bulk of the work today. Let's pick some drum sounds out. DR5 is going through the Alesis 3630 compressor just to give it a little more volume. My mixing board kind of sucks, and also it just sounds cooler. So we're in the pad settings and we are changing around the drum sounds. I think I might stick with the 909 kick. I like that more than the 808 as a straight kick because you can do the cool fast kicks on it. I'm gonna pitch it up a little bit. Actually, you know what? I like it right there. As low as it can go. I changed my mind. -700. Decay, let's cut that. Cut the decay to -10. That way it doesn't interfere with any other low sounds we choose to use. The snare, kind of tired of the 808 snare for the moment also. Lots of other good sounds on here. I think I'm going to go with the ambient stick because it's a Tommy Wright sound. And it's cool. Now the DR5 does not have the 78 cymbals, which is a shame because those are the other ones I like a lot. Maybe more than the 808 hi-hats. But since they're not on here, we're going to stick with the 808 hi-hat. So I'm going to make this beat here real quick, write some drums with Glock by Tommy Wright as the inspiration. Make sure that my sync is on internal because I have been messing with the MIDI a lot. And then also I'm just going to reuse some patterns here. So go back to 200, the first one, and I'm going to delete it. Yes, I'm sure. So we got a empty pattern. Most of mine are set to 16 bars. Just because it gives me a little more time to work with. So let's see, what are we, tempo? A little faster, I think. Yeah, 130 seems good. I want my quantization to quarter notes because I'm not going to write 16th note parts yet, and it syncs them up better. change the quantization back. We'll go up to 16th notes now. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that rhythm there. I'm going to do a couple other patterns similar just to give me more variation, and that way if I want to write a longer melody I can stretch it out over a couple patterns here. Okay, so now we got 3 patterns. I'm probably going to do like a 1-2-1-3 pattern style when I write the song. That's kind of my normal format because I get lazy and then I'm just like, and I know that I have a tendency to just write and write and write until it's so many different patterns that like you can't really, you can't really nod your head to it as well. I like the chaotic percussion, so we're trying to keep it minimal. So we got a nice little drum beat there. Let's pick some other sounds to work with. Nice little kind of creepy synth line there. I just have the saw pad and then I have the decay set to 0 so that the notes just kind of end when the next note starts. I don't want it cutting short and I don't want it overlapping. Now if I was smart about writing and I actually planned out what I was going to do, I could have done something like wrote that line on one pattern and then copied it to a bunch of others and added different drums to them. I didn't do that, so I'm just probably going to replay it on the other patterns that I made here. Okay, so what else can we do with that? Let's add some sub bass. I think that's where I'm at. So yeah, we're on track 2 here. We want octave shift down to -1. Now we got those low notes. So we're good to go back into the patterns. Let's go back to 200. Let's just kind of double up on some notes and then drop out. Just give it a little variety here. You really can't go wrong with the sleigh bell when using these old machines. It fills the space so nicely. Turn the decay up a bit so it is nice and long. Got a long tail on it. Okay, so we got a drum pattern, we got the bass and that other synth in there, that saw synth. Let's write something with the sample that we made earlier on the MIDI track on the FL. I've routed a MIDI cable from the MIDI through of the ESI 32 sampler into the MIDI in of the Dr. Rhythm, and I set the sync to MIDI now. So now, whatever the computer tells the microKORG to do, everything else will do that too. So if I start on the computer, everything else will start. And as long as I have different MIDI channels selected, you won't get any overlapping. Like, you know, if I play something on the sampler, those same MIDI keys won't trigger anything on the boss as long as all the tracks are set to different MIDI signals. But anyways, that's what's up. So the computer is now telling the DR5 to start, and we are also controlling the sampler so I can write some MIDI in there. Fucked up that last note, but you'll see what I'm going to do pretty quick. If you're wondering why it's taking me so long to click around on here, it's because I only have 3 USB ports and all of them are being used right now, so I can't plug in my fucking mouse, and I hate the pad on this fucking laptop. Anyways, I'm stopping at about 2 minutes. I like to make short tracks, so got about 2 minutes of that keyboard melody there, so that'll keep playing over the top of what I've made on the Dr. Rhythm now. Okay, so now we're gonna go back on here, figure out what to do with this other track. Can't really go wrong with the choir pad, especially for Memphis rap. There, finally found some notes. You might notice I go in and I delete a lot of single notes and go back and change them. It's because I don't know how to play the fucking piano. I don't know how to read music. But anyways, I'm still learning. Always looking for new ways to make melodies because I'm just, you know, I feel like I kind of have a tendency towards similar melodies. So here's what we got with 4 tracks taken up on the Dr. Rhythm now, as well as the little MIDI line that's going into that sampler. fair amount of stuff going on, and since the DR has some cool songwriting functions, we can kind of go in and make some more variations in that. I might write like a intro pattern or something like that by copying one of those patterns and then redoing the drums. So let's do that real quick before we go on. So then we can write our song, and then I'm going to bring in a Memphis loop as well. Okay, so we're back over here at the desk with the DR5, and now we've added the Yamaha SU-10 into the mix. So I got two samplers going. This is a much more portable one, and it's got some really weird stuff you can do with it. So even though it's not, it's like you can only do one effect at a time. Like say you want to use the pitch function, well then you can't use the crossfader or the filter or the scaler. And if you want to use the scaler, you can only do it with one sample at a time. So even though you can record like fucking 4 banks of 12 samples, you can only do like, I don't know, there's just some limitations. But if I'm using it in moderation, it is very cool. You know, I bring this setup to work, I could pretty much make a full beat here. So what I did in the meantime is I got a loop from a Memphis track. It was let's see, just because I'm gonna full transparency of what I'm doing here. This is Down From My Shit by DJ Livewire. That whole tape, I think it's the Butcher Shop mix, DJ Livewire. Very minimal beats. It's easy to kind of EQ out the low frequencies and use those as loops. So I've chopped it up into 2 loops here.
Now I'm booming, yeah, I'm finna come up with another scam. Riding up on you, dope, nigga, my trigger just don't give a damn.
And I've got them each assigned to a different pad. I've got it set to trigger mode so that it just plays the whole sample instead of you know, playing it only when I hold my finger down. So that way I can go back and forth. And then also I've got them set. There's a function in here where you could set them to a note group, and then, you know, that means that they'll cancel each other out. So they're both set to the same note group in addition to this empty pad. So if I want to just cut it off at any point, I can just do that instead of letting it play through. If you get that sampler, just something cool you can do with it. So that's also the sampler. I know in some of the late 90s and early 2000s, DJ sound tracks were made with that. I actually saw it in a video or a picture or something, and I think the picture was like earlier, so I don't know. But yeah, very affordable, at least then. I don't know about now, but I got mine for like under 200. Not a bad purchase. Anyhow, what I did is there's another function in here where you can set each pad to a different note. So that means you can control it from a MIDI source. So in your DR5 MIDI menu, make sure you have MIDI through set to off. You do not want to send the signal from the computer to this thing. You want to use this thing to control this as a MIDI keyboard. So we're doing a lot of crazy daisy chaining shit. That's just kind of how I do stuff. So I have 2 pads in my drum kit here turned all the way down, and then I have these notes set to the corresponding MIDI notes here, which is really easy.
Now I'm booming, yeah, I'm finna come up with another scam. Riding up on you, dope, nigga, my trigger just don't give a damn.
So just in your sampler, as long as you have MIDI connected, at least in this one, when you're setting it to the note, you just hit the note on here and it'll say, okay, that note, and then you just exit out of the edit menu. So that's how I did that. And this way, you know, a lot of the old Memphis records were made with samplers that did not have MIDI capability. So you're playing your samples in real time. That's why there's sometimes some shifting samples that aren't fully on beat. So this way, we're recording it MIDI into this pattern here. So that way, it's just going to be right on the beat. So now that I got that recorded and it's synced perfectly up to the beat, we can kind of tell that the samples aren't lined up quite like they should be. So I'm going to listen a little closer and then fuck with that. So it sounds like maybe they're just a little bit too slow. So I'm going to bring up the pitch here. That I'm using the pitch function on here with this little ribbon controller. Okay, so if you heard what I did there, I actually kind of, because it's sometimes hard to get this stuff in sync so it sounds good, just making minute adjustments to the pitch on here, and then when that couldn't really get me where I needed to be, I raised up the BPM, so now we're at 132 BPM, and so that's what we're going to do the song at now, because it sounds more in sync that way. So now we pretty much got everything that I want for this beat. I'm trying to keep it simple so that I can show basically all the steps. So let me see here. Did I forget to? Oh yeah, we gotta go add that to the other tracks now. So I'm just gonna add it to all of them, and then I'm gonna mix it later, you know, and decide where I want to keep it. But for now, it's just gonna be on every pattern here. I actually didn't do that on purpose. I don't know that little ghost note in there, but it sounds really cool. It gives it some variation, so I'm going to keep it. So now the slightly tedious part is I'm going to arrange the song on the DR5 so I can show you kind of how these functions work. Okay, so it's nearly impossible to capture anything with these screens that are not backlit. Or, yeah, they're not backlit, so it's just the numbers there like a fucking Game Boy. So that's about... Ooh. Noisy on this fucking street. Anyways, so yeah, that's about as good as I can do. We got it zoomed in full. We're gonna write the song here. So hit record when you're in song mode, and actually record again to let it know you're serious. So part 1, I'm not going to use a pattern here. I'm going to tell it to make track 1 volume 0, and that's because I want to mute that little saw synth there. So then we're going to start with pattern 5, pattern 4. Okay, that's the intro. So then I'm going to bring back in that synth, and then we're going to do one of those combos here of pattern 200, 201, and then back to 200, and then 202. All right, so that's one time. That's 4 patterns, so 16 times 4. I don't know what that is, but it seems like a lot. Okay, so now we're going to mute that choir pad, which is track 3. So we're going to do 4 like that. Or like this. Okay, 200, 201, 200, 202. Okay, we're going to throw a curveball here. Go up to pattern 205 again. Or no, 204. And we want that little intro with the drum break at the end. We'll see where that takes us, all right? Alright, so that's a start. Now, let's go back into MIDI control. And we want to set the sync to MIDI now, back to song. And now the computer will tell it what to do, and we'll have that little MIDI line, that synth line from the other sampler going too. Kind of like smoke on the water. So what I'm doing right now is listening, and I'm figuring out where the song is going to end, and if I, wrote enough parts. Alright, so it's definitely going to be enough. So that's what it's kind of sounding like all together. You got, hopefully it's pointed at the MPD. So that is the first in the MIDI chain going into my computer with a USB in. And that is just set to the MIDI device. So it's got an in and an out and a through. And so I've got the in and out synced up to the respective opposites in the microKORG, the outs and ins. And then I've got the MIDI through running out of there, so that is just getting the computer signal. We're not actually using the MPD right now other than just sending that signal. I am going to use those faders to do the final mix probably because it's just really handy. I like hands-on mixes. And so the MIDI through is going into here, the DR5. So that is controlling the master signal of the DR5. And the DR5, I've got the out going to the MIDI in on this guy. So that is just, this is acting as a MIDI controller for this. And the microKORG is acting as a MIDI controller for, I don't know if you could see it, but down there, that sampler. And it's just using it to play it as like a pad, like a synth pad. And everything is running into this mixing board here, which then goes into my audio interface that runs into the recording input of FL, which, you don't need to see that. The problem is, everything's all together on this mixing board. Once I route it into, I only have a 2-track audio interface, so it's just getting a stereo send from this board. It's not good if I want to go back and edit anything. So what we're going to do is go through, send the MIDI signal through, and just record everything individually by muting all the tracks on here and muting them on the DR5, so I don't have to put it into a bunch of different outputs, because the DR5 does not have alternate outputs like the DR660 does, so you only got your stereo out there. And you can fuck around and pan stuff really hard. So let's do the cymbals, the hi-hat on one track, and then let's do the kick and snare on another. Just simpler that way. So what I'm going to do here is I just switch this, instead of a stereo track on there, it's in 2 mono tracks on here. And then we come down here to the DR5, I'm going to edit some pads. Let's pan this hard left. Same thing with this. And I think we had that going too. We'll pan all those to one track, and then take this and let's pan it hard right. So now if we play the beat, we will have a separate track for the cymbals and a separate track for the kick and the snare and the little vibra slap thing. So we're going to mute everything except that first track there, which is going to be all of the kick, everything but the hi-hat basically. So we already got it set up to MIDI, so now we just need to go back to song function on here, and then we let FL do its job. Okay, so we come over here to FL, and we have all this set up. We're actually not worrying about the MIDI track right now. That's just going to keep doing its thing. We don't need to even go up to a separate track here. What we're going to do is go into View, and we want to see the mixer. We want to go to the first available, whatever you want to use really. We're going to go up here, and this is where you choose your audio input. So I'm choosing this US122L and right. That is how I send my audio interface into FL. So now if I hit record, what's going to happen is it's going to bring this up, and I want to do audio into the playlist as an audio clip. It's just going to go right into my playlist there with the MIDI information. Nice and clean and simple, but as soon as I hit it, it's going to start. So basically, we're just going to go through and do that for every part of this track right now. All right, so back over here at the laptop now to do the rest of the track. So what I did, I went through, muted all the tracks on the DR5, unmuted each one individually, recorded it into the DAW, and then unmuted the track with that sample, recorded that separately. I actually did a pass of the hi-hat without the sleigh bell and then one with, so I can kind of cut that up and decide where I want it. And then as well as that MIDI track there, I went into the FL playlist, and then I just unmuted that track and it just recorded. So now we've got everything set up. Oh, and then as well as just a little something extra, I used this guy here, and I just had a tape in here, just a blank tape, and I recorded some tape hiss. So we're gonna mix that in to give the beat some dirtiness and some tape energy, because I'm not using the tape this time. So let's get into the FL capture here and just fuck with it. You can see kind of what VSTs I use and also kind of how I go about setting up my mix. Okay, so I went through all the tedious tasks of changing all these names to what they are, setting them all to different tracks over here, or sends or whatever, and then, giving them all fun colors so that way I don't get mixed up. So we've got the kick and snare, we've got the hi-hat and bell, we've got the track without the bell being sent through there too, because why not just send them through the same one. We got the saw synth, the sub bass, the choir pad, the Memphis sample, the ESI pad, and the tape hiss, all going to different places. Kick and snare, I like to, even though I hit it with a compressor before, I always use Camel Crusher. I know it's a shitty VST and it gets a lot of shit for just being noisy, but I love the way it sounds. And I'm just gonna actually give it just no filter, just a little bit of tube distortion, and then the compressor. We like it in fat mode. I like it more down here so I can turn the volume up full. But then before I go any further, I want to show you something here. So if we zoom in on these MIDI tracks here, well, they're actually looking pretty good, but a couple of them, you can see, they happen before the beat just slightly, and that is just something you have to deal with MIDI, is because it takes these old machines a few seconds, well, not a few seconds, but it takes them like a few milliseconds maybe to get the information right, to line itself up to what the computer's telling it to do. So a lot of times you get things that are before or after the beat. So since we were using the same signal for everything, they are all going to be pretty close, and then we don't need this MIDI track anymore. So I go into the none here so that you could just have infinite possibility, and then I will just line these up manually to the grid, and then I'll probably go back and replace that kick that kind of got cut off there. But now I've got everything set up pretty much, well, maybe just a little bit more there to the grid. And so now if we set the click track, the metronome, you can hear that it lines up to the grid, where it would be a little bit off before. I was always taught in recording school that you want everything, all your other effects, well, you want your EQ first in your chain, basically. This one, we don't want any of those highs, and that's going to kind of get rid of the little hi-hat. Alright, there, so we kind of switched it up a bit between the hi-hat with and without that little sleigh bell going on. So, for that, I would probably, I didn't EQ it, so let's give it a little bit of EQ, get rid of those lows, and I'm going to put more compression on this too. We're going to use that fruity multi-band compressor, and I like bright for this stuff. And I also think I want a little bit of reverb on those guys. I'm going to use the demo version of Ambience, and is it good? I had a crack of it, but apparently that, you know, changed when I changed computers or some shit. I don't know. Anyways, Ambience, and I don't know. I'll just kind of go through these till I find one I like. Same thing with the sub bass here. I'm gonna put some Camel Crusher on it. Okay, for that saw synth, I'm putting the Fruity Multi-Band Compressor again, and I'm going to maximize number 2. That's one I like. I use a lot of stock presets because, I don't know, why the fuck not? It's, you know, somebody designed it probably better than I could. Choir pad. Okay, so that's pretty quiet too. So I'm going to put the Maximus on this instead. Memphis sample, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm going to do with this. I am going to squash it with a compressor. Just absolutely destroy it. So I just nudged that Memphis sample there and kind of made it line up more. There was still a little bit at the beginning that could have been chopped off to make it line up smoother. So, and honestly, I'm probably just going to put the sound goodizer on that and leave it. Like I said, I don't use a lot of effects when I'm doing these kind of beats. I do a lot of it beforehand, and then I just use them very sparingly. So what we got here is the kick. I've got some EQ, and I've got the Camel Crusher compressor there, giving it some dirt. For the hi-hat and bell, got a little reverb from the Ambience demo plugin apparently. A little bit of EQ, just kind of bounce those highs around, and we've got the Fruity Multi-Band Compressor to preset bright. That's what I like to use on hi-hats. The saw synth there, a little EQ again, big EQ, and the compressor. I think I have that one set to maximize. And the sub bass, of course, the Camel Crusher. No distortion, just some compression in the fat mode. Choir pad, we have some EQ. We have the Maximus, making it as loud as possible, and we've got the SPE comp. This is another free VST plugin you can get. I like the sound of it. Very analog type beat. Memphis sample, got some EQ, kind of dropping out the lows, the highs, and some of those mids too, just to kind of make it, the vocal just isolated. And then I slammed it with this compressor here, just the regular fruity compressor. And we go to the ESI pad, and we've got the sound goodizer on A. That is it on that one. And this tape hiss, which I recorded, I put the limiter on it. We have it set to sidechain, so the kick, it's sidechain to the kick. The kick is pushing that tape hiss out of the way. I will show you what that sounds like here. Just some added analog flavor. And now I will show you kind of what I'm going to do with the mixing of this beat. I kind of did some of the mixing already, but I'm going to probably send all these to those faders on that MPD and just do a little more mixing. But here's just a kind of taste of what I'm thinking for this track. So that's pretty much it. You know, I'm going to go, like I said, I'm going to go back, mix it a little more. But that's all the sounds I'm using on that track. And probably going to run it off on tape at some point and mess it up even further. But that's kind of how I've been making beats, using FL as well as the old stuff to kind of get the best of both worlds. And it's a little tedious, as you could see there, you know, doing each track individually like that. Kind of a pain in the ass, but the outcome, you know, I kind of prefer it to when I can't go back and fix stuff about a track that I don't like. So that's about it. We'll do some more crazy shit in the next video. Hopefully it won't be a million years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Alright, so I'm sitting here at work, I'm editing the video, and something I forgot to include is that I want to start doing user submitted beats. So at the end of the video, I don't know if you guys don't know, I do a lot of analog video mixing with like old fucking public access studio shit and like VHS I find at thrift stores, stuff like that. So I want to start doing user submitted beats where I'll do a little visual for it, you know, maybe some audio react stuff. So if that's something you're interested in, send your beats to me. Email address is depressivetongueposse@gmail.com. Just send me a little what's up, get at me on Instagram. Send me a beat, and you know, we'll do a little visual and we'll do a little spotlight at the end of the video. But yeah, no, I want to hear what you guys are doing with the Memphis hardware shit. So yeah, send that shit to me. We'll get something up on the channel.